Coming up on show 394, he sounds a little bit better today edition. Mercedes-Benz EQC gets an update, including where it's going to be made. The Hyundai Kona is named the cheapest EV per mile of range in the US, and a Tesla Model 3 offer for leasing, but only for employees. Those details and many more stories on today's show. Well, good morning, good afternoon and good evening. In fact, wherever you are in the world, welcome to EV News Daily for Thursday, the 21st of February. My name is Martyn Lee. I've been through every EV story I can find today. There's been so much going on. I've tried to really slim it down, but it's a long show today. I'm sorry. Every story is essential. And I've picked out just the ones I think you need to know about to save you time and to make sure that you are on top of everything happening in the EV space. Well, if you want to buy and sell EVs, then the place in the US is myev.com. Had a good catch-up earlier today with the team. Nick from myev, who is busy building the world's first marketplace about buying and selling EVs and learning about them along the way as well. Hello to all the team there. Working in somewhat sunnier conditions than I am here in the UK. Cold, not too wet this week. They do say we got some good temperatures coming soon, but myev over in Miami is slightly nicer. And welcome to at least 3, in fact probably more actually, members of the Patreon gang as I was coming out here, just refreshing my phone, and David as well. Now David's increased his support. I do this at the beginning of the show because it means so much. Please don't skip forward 30 seconds because this is important to me. First up, David Barkman. David Barkman was a producer and he's increased his support to executive producer. Thank you, David. Hello to Birkin. That's all, the only name that I've got through the Patreon system is Birkin. If you have a surname, or maybe it's just Birkin, like Cher or Madonna, let me know. Thank you very much for signing up at producer level, Birkin. Hello to new executive producers, Rajiv Narayan. Thank you very much, Rajiv, for sending me the story about the surge of Model 3 orders in China. And also Phil Mouchet. Phil, thank you very much, both of you, Phil and Rajiv, new executive producers of the podcast. And finally, Lejek Grzil. Lejek Grzil from VR-Here. I'll tell you more about them at the end of the show, and also I think I've got his name correct. Lejek did send me an audio version of his name, actually, which I should be able to play to you.
Leszek Grzil.
He says that he supports others on Patreon, and I wouldn't be the first one that's perhaps struggled with his name. Thank you so much for sending that through. Let's kick off then with what I mentioned, the Mercedes-Benz EQC, a little update on that. I've been surfing around today to just update a few facts and things that I might have missed over the last couple of weeks. These little nuggets come through online, a few things that I've picked up. I didn't realise. Some of the articles online talk about the EQC 300, and some of them talk about the EQC 400. And I didn't know there was a 300 and a 400, did you? 2 models of the EQC. Is that just the journalists getting it wrong, mixed up, early press releases? I thought the only one was the Mercedes-Benz EQC 400. The 300 seems to be the base model. The 400 seems to be some sort of increased model. Both of them I know top out at 112 miles an hour, 402 brake horsepower. That is from 300 kilowatts of power, hence EQC 300. If I'm not getting too confusing, both of them have 300 kilowatts of power and 564 pound-feet of torque. There's an optional AMG styling package, which I never knew. The horizontal light bar, which runs the width of the car on the back, the boot, is no longer special. You see those full-width horizontal light bars, brake lights, all that kind of stuff on new Audis, the new e-tron, the new Porsches. But how about this? The EQC, I didn't know this until I saw a picture today, has a full-width horizontal white light bar that runs across the front of the entire car. I love it. It looks so cool. I've not seen that before. It's officially called the 2021 EQC. It's the 2021 model year. Fear not, dealers will have it in 2020. I've read a couple of articles today as I've been digging around on this, which says production starts in 2020. Final calibration testing is currently being done in icy conditions for the front motor, that's for low and medium speeds, and the rear motor is for high performance, much like the Tesla way of doing it. It's got 3 modes: sport mode, where you can get a bit of sideways action going on, turns off the traction control, comfort mode and eco mode. Ground clearance is 5 inches, and it's interesting that BMW aren't going big on this being a fully fledged SUV with only 5 inches of ground clearance. The battery, 80 kilowatt hours, just to remind you on that, 110 kilowatt charge speed. It's quick, not the quickest, but it's pretty darn quick. And in 2018, last year, Mercedes-Benz sold 674,000 vehicles, including their Smart brand, in China. Year-on-year growth of 10%. The German premium car brand is going to roll out 15 models in China, including the new E-Class and a mid-cycle GLC refresh, according to InsideEVs, and that includes the all-new EQC. But what about the cars they sell in China? Where will they be made? News surfacing today. It's going to be produced in Beijing by Beijing Benz. In some time, the Beijing production starts in 2019, so this article said, and I imagine that might be just the first few on the production run, just to get up and running before the big numbers come in 2020. Second half of the year, clearly, I would say even towards the very end of the year, the first few coming from the Beijing factory. That's really interesting. Okay, moving on to a car that's very, very popular, the Hyundai Kona. The Kona Electric is the US's cheapest EV per mile of range, says Mark Kane at InsideEVs. When you compare all the all-electric models that are available in the US, Mark found that the Kona Electric has the lowest ratio of price, so that is the retail price and the destination charge together, per mile on the EPA range, by a big margin actually. It's $145 a mile, $145 a mile of range. The second best is the Bolt, which is 9% higher, $158 a mile. It's interesting how much the federal tax credit comes into play if you assume that it applies to all EV buyers. They're qualified for the $7,500 rebate. A reminder, for those not in the US, this is an incentive, but you pay your tax bill this year. If you buy an EV, you get it off next year's tax. So you still have to pay the sticker price, but then it's tax that you don't have to pay next year. So you are out of pocket for a period of time, which is how the US does it, right? The reason behind the more affordable price of range lies in the Hyundai Kona Electric having a good price, a high battery capacity, and that base price of $37,495 being effectively less than $30,000 when you factor in the federal tax credit. Big battery, 64 kilowatt hours, and a range of 258 on the EPA. That's 415 kilometers, by the way. I'll put a link to InsideEVs in the show notes. By the way, if you're working your way backwards on your podcast feed and you haven't heard the two previously and you think my voice sounds bad today, I'm at the end of 3 days of man flu, and trust me, I feel so much better today, even though I sound still pretty poorly. The last 2 days were not pretty. Right, let's move on to trucks. Volvo Trucks delivered its first all-electric vehicle this month, a refuse truck to waste and recycling company Renova, and a distribution truck to a logistics company DB Schenker, operating in Sweden, says Green Car Congress. The Volvo electric trucks aren't released yet. They are pre-release series trucks in collaboration with just selected customers who they can work with. Now, series production of the Volvo electric trucks, and it's, there's two of them. There's the FL electric and its more powerful sibling, the FE electric. Series production starts with a limited run for European markets only, second half of this year. Expect 2020 when you see more of those Volvo electric trucks around. By the way, a story on yesterday's podcast all about the EU here in Europe putting in new emissions rules for incentivizing the move to emissions-free trucks, which is, in other words, pure electric trucks. They named hydrogen in there as well, but I just, apart from the odd demonstration truck, I don't see it happening in the next couple of years. These EV trucks, like the Tesla Semi, the Mercedes E-Actros, these Volvo ones, they're out, they're doing testing now, they're going to be with customers soon, and so that's why there's a push on commercial trucks. 22%, 25% of all emissions come from just 5% of vehicles, and that is the trucks on our road. That's why we need to focus on commercial vehicles as well as the sexy cars that we talk about on this podcast. Moving on to a company that I would call Peugeot, but I hear some people call Peugeot. They updated their brand identity today with more details ahead of the Geneva Motor Show. Their brand identity is called Motion and Emotion. Motion and Emotion. But what they did today by updating their brand identity, the E of emotion, they made lowercase and they made it bluey-greeny. So really their new brand identity, even though it still says the words motion and emotion, it's now meant to stand for motion and emotion, which signifies how Peugeot and indeed the PSA, the parent company, think that they are moving to an electrified future. I thought it was kind of a cute story to bring you on the podcast. Motion and e-motion. I think they've even put a hyphen in there as well, so that they don't. It's now motion and e-motion. It's a communications change, really. Peugeot's e-Legend concept is coming, and the plug-in hybrid technology deployed at the end of the year on the Peugeot 3008s, the 508 sedan, the 508 SW. At the Geneva Motor Show in a couple of weeks, we're going to see more from this new brand identity and hear more about the cars as well. Moving on to Tesla. Tesla employees may be allowed to lease the Model 3 in about 2 weeks. Now, does that mean only employees will be able to lease the Model 3, or will it be then opened up to the masses? Asks InsideEVs today. Well, the story goes to say that Tesla have confirmed to Electrek that this email that was found was actually real. However, Tesla was clear that the email was an internal document to prepare certain employees. The automaker also made it clear there's been no official decision about when leasing will start. May start, they say, except that it will begin sometime after the time frame which was suggested. So the suggested time frame was a couple of weeks. So anytime after that, employees could well be leasing a Model 3 as a way of starting the lease program. Then it makes its way to the general public, or maybe it never makes its way to the general public. You think that Tesla would do some sort of leasing? I gather, again, I'm no expert, I gather that the way that leasing works in the US does all sorts of strange things to their financials that they have to report, makes the company almost seem in a worse financial position. Leasing here in Europe, I gather that the financials, the way they're reported, slightly different, and that actually the Tesla leases may start over here in the UK and in Europe before the US for the Model 3. But again, purely a rumour, could mean absolutely nothing. Good luck to the employees of Tesla that may well get in a new Model 3 thanks to the lease program. Time for a couple of Elon tweets, the section of the show that I like to call Elon tweets. He sent out a tweet saying Tesla made 0 cars in 2011 and will make 500,000 in 2019. Then he quickly followed it up. I wonder if someone told him off. Meant to say, says Elon Musk, meant to say annualized production rate at the end of 2019, probably around 500k, i.e. 10,000 cars a week. Deliveries for the year still estimated at 400,000. End tweet. Yes, he got in trouble for giving guidance to the market, didn't he? And now all his tweets are supposed to be vetted. Doesn't sound like they are. He did quickly correct himself, saying, actually, it's not 500,000 this year, 400,000 this year, but by the end of the year, an annualized rate of 500,000. Holy moly, I don't want to be nitpicking the difference of 100,000 cars in a tweet and whether he should have tweeted this and that. Let's just take one step back or 10 steps back and look at that. Whether it's 400,000 or 500,000 cars a year, wow. It's such an achievement from a car company that, like he says, back in 2011, were making no cars. Well, they were getting gliders from Lotus, intending to use them to make the original Roadster, but in the end changed nearly all of the bits that they got from Lotus, changing the door sills and the screen and strengthening it for the battery and taking out all sorts of bits. It's if you ever get to read that's a fascinating story. It's not a film, it's just articles that you can find online about the story of the original Roadster and how much they changed from the glider cars they were buying from Lotus. They originally intended to pop in a battery and a motor and off and away you go, and it was anything but that. It was a fascinating story. So congratulations to everyone involved in that story. Staying with Elon Musk, by the way, he appeared on a podcast on ARK Invest's weekly podcast called For Your Innovation. Teslarati says that Musk noted that car makers that showed interest in Autopilot have requested Tesla to change aspects of the software before it can be shared. Such requests, according to Musk, bring an unnecessary addition to Tesla's engineering overhead. I didn't realise this, that other car makers have made inquiries about whether they could use Tesla's Autopilot technology. Elon said this, and I haven't asked permission to use the clip, and I think, if I was being proper, I would, so I'll just read you what Elon said. And I quote, generally, we found that it's not easy to work with traditional automakers. They're not exactly banging on our doors to work with us. On the patents they have, that's very different from, say, creating an integrated system. So if there's an automaker out there that wants to implement this same hardware system as Tesla and use our software, we would be very open to it. But we're not going to change it. What has happened is that they'd want to work with us, but they say, but we want you to change the following 6 things. No. Because it's going to slow us down massively. If you want to use exactly our thing, that's fine, but they don't want to use exactly our thing. We're open to other automakers using the supercharger network. We're open to them using Autopilot. They just need to make it work without a ton of overhead to Tesla's engineering, end quote. And on the subject of hardware, Elon Musk on this podcast reiterated the point that he made earlier last year actually, stating that everyone who's purchased full self-driving will be getting Tesla's new hardware. Hardware 3, the upgrade, and it's going to come for free as well. Elon also explained that as neural networks used for autopilot and full self-driving get more advanced, it becomes more challenging to optimize software according to given hardware limitations, something that Tesla's already employing in its current hardware. That's made by NVIDIA, by the way, a name you may recognise. Musk was ultimately optimistic about the improvements offered by their own hardware, stating that the custom-built solution has not tapped out despite intensive tests. And again, I'll bring you a quick quote I thought was interesting. Elon Musk said, and I quote, "Right now, we can process on the order of 100 frames a second, and we really need to do a lot of work in terms of cropping the frames and bending the pixels and not going to full resolution on all the cameras, that kind of thing with the current hardware. We're at full frames, full resolution with the Tesla hardware. All cameras at full resolution, full frames, and it still hasn't tapped out." End quote. So that's why Tesla moving to their own hardware from the NVIDIA hardware, and, which is worth saying, is not NVIDIA's latest. So it's not as if they can make significantly better hardware than NVIDIA, who are a top producer of chips, by the way. It's just that the NVIDIA hardware in current Teslas is pretty old now. And so I imagine if they used the very latest NVIDIA stuff, it wouldn't be quite so bad in comparison, if you get my drift. But anyway, they're going down their own route, their own hardware, and he's clearly enormously proud of it. Right, 2 more stories. I can feel my voice wobbling. This new batch of photos of the Porsche Taycan Sport Turismo. It's a wagon, and it might give us our best look yet at the all-electric 4-door Porsche, says Autoblog. The spy pictures that Autoblog have are really fascinating of the Taycan Sport Turismo wagon. They say that the 2 lower air intakes, if you can picture that, the lower air intakes have flaps that open and close, likely to improve airflow at certain low and high speeds. The sensors for the radar cruise control, they're placed right in the centre at the front of the car, similar to the placement on the new 2020 Porsche 911. I'll put a link to Autoblog in the show notes if you want to see those spy pictures. Really interesting that Porsche are doing that testing of that car. And finally, BMW at the Motor Show in Geneva very soon will focus on their new offensive of luxury plug-in hybrids. Their electrified drive system in a few weeks. After being unveiled to the world, we'll see more at Geneva. The BMW 7 Series luxury sedan, we've seen it already, is going to have its Motor Show debut in Geneva. In addition, the 4th generation of the plug-in hybrid powertrain sets a clear mark for the importance of the technology for their plug-in hybrid technology. The BMW 745e iPerformance, that is going to come in 3 versions, by the way, but that's a big, luxury, gorgeous car, the 745e. 745e, 745LE, and the 745LE xDrive, all with plugs. The BMW 330e, that's going to be a big seller. The new version of that is going to be a big seller if they can produce enough of them. And the BMW X5 xDrive 45e, again with a plug, and their latest hybrid powertrain. And I'd like to hear more from the BMW group, by the way, on the electric Mini. It's gone a little bit quiet, which just means they're probably just getting on with it behind closed doors. But I've not seen too much. If you see anything, by the way, forward it on, because I'm curious about that car. It doesn't use, as far as I know, it uses the previous generation BMW EV powertrain, not the latest 5th gen one. And I'd like to confirm that one way or the other. It would seem, well, I'd be disappointed if they're using already old technology in a car that isn't out yet. And I think the Mini, again, is a very, very popular form factor size car. And even at a premium price, I think could be a very popular EV if they get it right. But I'm struggling to get more details on that. Let me know if you can help out. So thank you to myev.com for sending us our question of the week this week. Keep your comments coming in as always. Is there room for startup EV makers to succeed, or will the oncoming rush of models from the established names stifle any of those newcomers? What do you think? Which way is it going to go? Let me know. Email me hello at evnewsdaily.com. That is hello at evnewsdaily.com. You can leave comments on YouTube and Facebook as well. Right, almost there, if I can struggle through to the end. So I mentioned that Lejek is our new executive producer on the podcast. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I asked him about what his business is, because I thought that people who listen to this show would be curious about a company called VR Here. Well, he replied and said, my business is called VR Here. The website is vr-here.co.uk. It's the UK's first virtual reality experience centre, and it features full body tracking that is using the HTC Vive. Since we opened in May 2 years ago, many other centres have now opened around the UK. I've been driving EVs since 2012, he says, starting from the Peugeot Ion, then the First Leaf, then the Zoe, and he had two of those at one stage, and now because of the business, he has the BMW i3 Rex. His wife has one white Zoe still, 22 kilowatt hour on a battery lease. That sounds familiar. There is one of those sitting not too far away from me on my driveway. Thank you very much for telling us your story. We always like to hear stories from other listeners to the podcast, don't we? There are now 188 patrons of the show. Thank you for your generosity. We get to make this every single day. What's today? Thursday. I've got one more day. I've got one more day in my job. 22 years full-time in radio, 25 years since I started volunteering when I was 15. Somewhat of a change of career. I'm going to see if I can make podcasts the second stage of my career, my life. This is Act 2. It all starts in a couple of weeks' time. Looking forward to it. But the job, the long old career that I've given up to take a gamble on doing this, is ending tomorrow. Wish me luck. Thank you very much to everyone who's left a review lately, by the way, on the podcast. I would encourage you to carry on sharing the podcast if you can, because there's so much in the archive that people can discover. 393 previous shows are online for free, but please do share this with at least one person who you know, a group, a community, someone you can on social share the podcast with and say, hey, thought you might like to be interested in the EVs, have a listen to this. It would mean so much to me. Right, I'm not getting emotional, just my voice is going with this cold. Thank you very much to everyone who's connected on socials in the last 24 hours. Just search EV News Daily to find me. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. And please remember, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.